Good morning. Welcome to Let's Get Growing Facebook Live. We are in the greenhouse today. It's late January, and that means for gardeners it is time to get started seeding. We're going to be looking at several different methods today of growing from seed. Just getting organized here. Bit of a snowstorm this morning. All right. Starting plants from seed, it can probably one of the more fun and more frustrating aspects of the hobby of gardening. If you want to save money, it's a great way to do that. You can start a lot of plants from a few packets of seed. Sometimes you get a lot of seed in packets. You don't have to sow it all. Remember that. A lot of seed will keep for several years. If you get 50 tomato seeds in a packet, you don't want to start 50 tomato plants. That's an awful lot of tomatoes. So you need to think about that. Laura, are we going to get a little bit of fuzz on that? Are they foggy, those things, from being outside, or are they okay?
I think they're okay.
All right. So we're going to do a few methods of starting from seed. You can do this for vegetables, annuals, perennials. One of the nice things about starting perennials from seed is if you grow them from seed, you can get a lot of different perennials that you won't find in garden centers. They can be a little more challenging to start from seed, which is part of the reason why you might not see them in garden centers very often, but it certainly widens the range of plants that you can grow. Laura, is there a seed packet in that clear tray there? And actually, you can pass me all those over too. So there's a few different ways and materials to use for seed starting. For us, we use the same 3.5 inch pots that we grow everything in. It's our standard pot. It's the standard pot of size you're buying annuals and things in. And why do we use the 3.5 inch pot? Because really, the amount of seeds you can start in a 3.5 inch pot in most cases is more than one gardener will ever need of a specific item. You can put them in trays easily. They're easy to manage. And we'll show you how to do that in a second. If you're using larger seeds, like when we do our sweet peas, we'll do them in a tray like this that's got individual cells. We'll do 1 or 2 seeds per cell, and then when we want to transplant them, we just pop them out of that cell. This is a good way to do larger seeds for things that don't like to have their roots disturbed very much. And a sweet pea and other vines would certainly be in that group of plants. So we'll do individual, but we'll do them the same way. We treat them just the same. In the garden centers right now, you're going to find lots of kits and things. You'll find lots of things like the little peat pots. These are Jiffy peat pots. They're made of compressed paper fiber. Nice thing about these is they are biodegradable. You can actually just in these transplant the whole pot right into the ground. Let's get one apart here. No. There we go. So you can fill these with soil. This is like a 2-inch pot, so they'd fit probably 4 of these. Yeah, 4 of those to a tray. So 8 times 4 is 32 plants per tray. What you do is just sort of tear this pot apart on the bottom and then plant. Then you just leave all this in the soil. So it's a nice way to be a little bit more eco-friendly. A little bit harder to handle, but if you're doing it at home, not a big deal. because they'll just sit right in the trays, 4 of them in a tray like that. So another thing you can use, and a lot of people like these, I'm not a big fan of them, is the little Jiffy pucks. Or these ones are actually big Jiffy pucks. But you buy the little dry disc like this, little peat discs, soak them overnight, and this is what you end up with. A nice little bag of peat ready to take your seedlings. Now again, these aren't bad for individual seeds. If you're doing smaller things, you can sprinkle them in there. One mistake I see people make is that they start their seeds in this and then need to transplant them out because they've put 5 or 6 tomato seeds in there. That's not really what these are meant for. These would be meant for something like let's say a scarlet runner bean. When you've got seeds that are big, a big seed like a runner bean, you could do into the peat pots very simply. Push them in there, boom, away you go, sown. Pack them in a tray, and away you go. The little mesh netting, when you go to transplant, tear that apart a little bit. It'll decompose, but not right away. Then the roots can get out and do their thing. The one thing you need to be careful with the peat pots is that they are open to air all the way around and can lose moisture all the way around and dry out very quickly. And one main rule about growing from seed, once you've sown the seed and wet the seed, do not let it dry out. If you let seed dry out through the germinating process, chances are that seed is going to die and you're going to get nothing. So you can treat them that way, but not my favorite way of doing things. I don't like them very much. But anyway, they do work well for some people. We're going to look at our method. It's very simple. We've got our 3.5-inch pots filled with moistened soil. Make sure the soil's moist. Not wet, but moist when you're seeding. It's much easier to work with. We've got the soil sort of firmed in the pot. Dust up the little top a little bit so it's got a little bit of movement there. And then we take our seed. What we're sowing today is onions. From a vegetable standpoint, January is for onions, leeks, shallots, things like that. They like to be started early, then you transplant them out in the spring. Most other vegetables you're not doing yet. Do not do your cucumbers and melons and pumpkins and all those things in January. You will have 8-foot vines in 4-inch pots in your house. It's ridiculous. We'll talk more about those later on. But if you want to get a good crop of leeks or onions, now's the time to start them. So we've got our little onions here. If you're wondering how to grow things and start them from seed, the seed packs are usually very good. This is a Mr. Fothergill seed. You can find them on seed racks anywhere. They have great germinating instructions on the back. Most seed companies will put good germinating instructions there because every plant's a little bit different. So watch for that. Where you run into problems is when you've collected seed out of your own garden and you just have them in envelopes of seed with the name on it and you're not sure what to do. Then you've got to go online and look for seed germinating instructions. For perennials, one of the best places to go Ontario Rock Garden Society Seed Germination Guide. It's probably one of the best guides available. It's been put together by many years of the members of the Ontario Rock Garden and Hardy Plant Society, sowing seed, submitting what works, and then compiling that data and having a great germination guide online. You can find that on the Ontario Rock Garden and Hardy Plant Society's website. It's there for free. You don't need to be a member to access it. It's there for everybody. There are other good germination guides around. Often the seed companies will have their germination information online, so you can find things about that there as well. So if you're not sure what to do with a specific seed, it is easy to find it. Onions are very straightforward. They're a pretty good sized seed, so they're pretty easy to handle. Seed will often come in, the packages, but then it'll also be in a foil pack afterwards. This little foil pack keeps the seed fresh longer. Okay, that's why it's there. So what we do is we open our seed pack. Now
Jeff,
this is
while
where
you're opening your seed pack, what do you use as a seed starting mix?
So our seed starting mix is exactly what we grow everything else in. A special, like a Pro Mix type soil mix. This is a high porosity one, so it's got more perlite added. We'll look at perlite in a second. But we don't do anything different with our seed mix than what we use to grow our greenhouse plants in. Same mix. You can get seed starting mixes. They're much finer in texture, but we use just the regular mix that we do everything else in. So we've got our seed here. We're going to open the envelope. Now you can get lots of little devices and little tools that you put the seed in and then sprinkle it in. I just use my seed packets, fold them into a little sort of funnel shape, and then I can just gently shake the seed out. So you can see the seed is there, then you can see it getting ready to come out. So can you see that? Nice big seeds.
Yep.
All right. So gently firm my soil in, loosened it a little bit on the top. Then these are big seeds, so I'm going to slowly sprinkle the seed in the seed pot, trying to get it as even as possible until I've gone sort of back and forth over the pot a couple of times. So you can see, if you look up close, there's lots of little black seeds in there. They're kind of evenly spread out over the top of the pot. But I still have a whole bunch of seed left, because in this package, I think there was about 200 seeds in that package. So remember, if it's squash seeds, you're not planting 200. Onion seeds, you might plant 200, but you're not going to put 200 into one pot. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do another pot, maybe two, of the onion. When onion germinates, it's like grass, so you can do a lot in a small pot. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to do a second pot here. Get them nice, evenly spaced. So there we go. We're about half and half. So there's going to be about 100 onion seedlings in these pots. Sounds like a lot, but like I said, they're like a thin blade of grass. They're not going to take up much room when they're at this stage. They will need to be transplanted later, but for germinating, it's going to be fine. So what we've done, we've got the seed sitting loosely on the soil mix. What we now have to do is gently push and firm that soil down again, because you want the seed to make very good contact with the moist soil. If the seed is floating in the air and not touching the soil well, it's going to stay dry and it's not going to germinate. So we want to make sure we're pushing that soil down. There we go. Now, this is where our perlite comes back in again. You get two different things we're going to talk about. We've got perlite and vermiculite. So, vermiculite is an expanded stone product. If you remember back to elementary school science, and you looked at rocks and minerals, and you felt like that mica stone that used to flake off like little bits of gold, little flakes of gold. That's what vermiculite is. It's that mica stone, but it's been baked, and it becomes very spongy and very sponge-like actually in its use. So, what vermiculite is used for is to hold moisture in a soil mix until the peat in the soil mix can get a hold of that moisture. So we got vermiculite there. We use it sometimes. More often than not, we use perlite. And perlite is the white little pebbles sort of thing that you see in your soil mixes. So you see in these pots, those little white flakes there, that's perlite. Perlite is a volcanic rock that is mined, and then again, like the vermiculite, it is baked at very high temperatures, and it puffs it all up. But it doesn't puff it up and make it like a sponge. They're still kind of hard. And perlite is mixed into soil mixes to make the mixture a little more gritty and make it drain well. You know, if you just had a pot of peat and you got it wet, it would just stay soggy for a very long time. What the perlite does mixed in, it allows air to get into that mix and allows the mix to stay very open and much more beneficial for plants. Now, what we do with the perlite and seeding is we're going to use that perlite and we're going to cover our seed with it. So we've got our seed pushed in. It's in good contact with the soil. We're going to take our perlite and we're just going to put a nice sort of thin layer of perlite over the soil at about the thickness of the seed that we sowed. You confirm that down again, and then our pot is sown. After we do that, and we've done a whole tray of it, or well, we can do it individually, it doesn't really matter. After we firm that soil down, put the perlite in, just like that. Nice even coat. You don't need to put it in too thickly. That's going to help keep the moisture around the seeds till they germinate. What we do from then is we take our moist pots of soil and we set them right in trays of water. And we're going to leave them sitting in that tray until they've soaked up all the moisture they want to soak up from the bottom. When we do our seeds, we never water from the top, because if you water from the top, you run the risk of bouncing seed into another pot, burying the seed too deeply, and just making it hard for it to germinate. So we always do it this way. So when you're shopping for your seed starting supplies, look for these trays that are like our greenhouse trays but don't have any holes. Because what you can do is you can sow your whole tray of seed, set it in that tray with no drainage holes, fill that tray up, and then let the seedlings soak it all up.
Jeff, Michelle would like to know if you can use the perlite with the peat pellets.
Yeah, you can. So if you've got your peat pellets, where did my pellets go? I got one here. So the peat pellets are just solid peat. But if you're sowing the seed there, then you just take a little pinch of perlite and just cover the seed if you need to. Not a bad way to do it. Also lets you know which seed pots you've sown. So we do that for most things. We will use the vermiculite occasionally. If it's a very small seed and we want to make sure we keep it moist, then you can use the vermiculite in the same way as you use the perlite. Just a nice, light covering over. Keeping in mind, that will keep a lot more moisture right at the seed itself. So if you're doing very tiny seeds, vermiculite might be a good option for you. We generally will use the perlite all the way through, but occasionally we'll use vermiculite. So for big seeds and average size seeds, that's what we do. So I'm going to go through my bag here real quick if I can find the one I'm looking for. And I'm going to find a small seed to do, because we handle small seeds a little bit differently. We got lots of neat seed out of the garden here. Let's find something that is a tiny seed. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. Small seed can be a little daunting to many people if you've never handled small seed before. But not to worry, you can do it and do it just the same and have the same success as using larger, seeds with things. So not a panic. You do need to handle it carefully, and I'm going to show you what I mean by small seed. This is a calceolaria, or pocketbook flower. Let me find a piece of something here. We're going to sprinkle a bit of calceolaria seed onto this piece of cardboard, and Laura's going to get a close-up so you can look at it. Can you see that, Laura?
You can, barely.
So that is calceolaria seed. Now, there are a lot of plants out there that have seed this tiny. So how do we sow tiny seed like this without getting it buried way too deeply in the pots? This could go for things like poppy seed, foxglove seed, nicotiana seed, petunias, just to name a few. But there's the calceolaria seed. It is tiny. Not quite as bad as some. If you've ever grown begonias from seed, you'll know what I'm talking about. But what we do is we do it a very similar way, except we reverse a step. So we've got our soil here in our pots, moistened, ready to go. At this stage, we then take our perlite and we scatter a thin layer of perlite over the soil mix. So we get the soil basically covered with perlite like this, right? You can firm it down gently, but we have a nice airy layer of perlite there. And then what we do with this tiny seed is we then sprinkle it on top of the perlite. We do it just the same. we go back and forth. But you got to be careful because you could easily put thousands of seeds down in a pot this big. So you need to be very careful. You probably can't see it, but I'll hold it up here. You probably can't even see the seed in there. But what we do now is we just do this. We very gently tap the pots so the little seeds work their way down in between the pieces of perlite. And then we soak them. And we let them soak up all that water. And it's for things like this that if we ever watered that from the top, the seeds would be gone. They'd be buried in the pot, they'd be in the pots next door, they'd be all over the place. So that's why we always soak from the bottom.
So Jeff, Sophie was asking where you get the little envelopes for your seed. And then you can get them at their small coin envelopes. And you can get them on Amazon or at Staples.
Yeah, we go to Staples and get a box of like 500. Lasts us for a couple of years. They're just coin envelopes. Nothing special about them. You can get other seed envelopes and things that are made of glassine, like wax paper. They're a little harder to find, but you know what? For us, these work great. So we'll just set those aside for now. So, basic sowing. Very simple. What do we do with these after? For most seed, or for many seeds, all we need to do now is put them in a tray like this. Laura, can you pass me that humidity cover there? Once they've soaked up all the water they can, they go into a tray like this. They get a humidity cover over them. And they sit in a bright spot indoors. Don't put them in a sunny window. This will turn into an oven. It'll get very hot over the course of a day. So in a bright spot indoors is ideal. With the pots well soaked and this humidity tent on, you probably won't need to water the seeds until they are germinated, which is great. For most seeds, household temperatures are fine. If you water them and soak them in with warm water, your household temperatures around 20 degrees is exactly what most seed want. If you've got a cool house or a cool room, but your seed needs a bit more warmth, then you can put them onto the heating mats that we talked about last week for cuttings. But be careful because you want to be sure about what your seed temperatures are. Most plants, like I said, will germinate household temperatures just fine. Some perennials want it a bit cooler, so a cool room would be ideal. If you're seeing a lot of too much humidity build up in here, if you've got a good lids, they have vents on them. You can open up, let a little bit of that excess air come out. Now,
so a couple of questions.
Yes, let's answer the questions for sure. Yeah.
Julie bought vermiculite at Lowe's and it's large pieces.
You can get vermiculite.
Are some brands marked fine or coarse? Seems to be working for Diplodonia seeds, but
they should be marked. And interestingly enough, I just grabbed this yesterday. Didn't really look at it to see if there was a size on there, but this is a very fine grade of vermiculite. Look at how fine that is. You can get vermiculite all the way up to big chunks, but it all does the same thing. So if your seeds get mixed in and you're using vermiculite and they get mixed into a big chunk of vermiculite, that's okay.
So the next questions are around where can you buy 3.5-inch pots, the smaller seed pots with the trays that go with them?
Well, if you go to just about anywhere that sells things for outdoors, garden centers, Home Depots, Canadian Tires, PV Marts, everybody's got a seed starting section set up right now. But I noticed that when I was in there, in a couple of them the other day, they do a lot of the peat pot trays, which are fine if you like those. They do a lot of tray setups with the biodegradable pots, which is fine. It might take you a little bit more to find a 3.5-inch pot tray. Garden center. In our area, Vandermeer's usually has the pots out separately. You can buy them separately and set up your own sort of germinating trays like I've got here. And garden centers will do that. And box stores won't. They'll have it just pre-made kits.
And where can you buy the humidity covers?
Humidity covers, same. Lots of places carry them. You can get the short ones for about $3. This is one of the taller ones. These are about $8 to $10, but they're great. They last a long time. They're sturdy. You can certainly get them through Amazon if you wanted to. Good garden centers, hydroponic stores. You know, don't feel bad about going into a hydroponic store anymore. I think everybody used to have this stigma of, if you were going into the hydroponic store, you were going in there to buy cannabis growing products. And, well, that's what they sell a lot of. They also sell a lot of good seed starting equipment and stuff for growing plants indoors. So visit your local hydroponic stores. Most towns have at least one good one. So don't discount them for your supplies for this kind of stuff. Yeah.
And when you're watering with a tray full of water, how do you know when the pot is taken on enough water?
So, how do you know when the pot's taken on enough? Well, the ones that I was soaking haven't yet. When you see your perlite or vermiculite on the top getting wet, then you know you've got enough moisture in there. You're going to take the pot out, let it drain a bit, and then, you know, put it back into your tray. Also, you're going to go by feel. So if you're sowing your seed and you pick this pot up and you go, okay, this is slightly moist, I know what it feels like. Then you go like this and you go, oh, that's like 3 times heavier. That's a good gauge too about how much moisture you've got in there. But you will see water droplets sort of form on the perlite or vermiculite in your trays.
And just as an FYI, those glassine envelopes are also available on Amazon.
Yeah, those little glassine envelopes, you can get them online for sure. Now, most seeds can be done just that way. Put into a nice room temperature room in your house, and you're good to go. But there are a couple of other methods that more specialty plants often need. So a lot of perennials, shrubs, trees, if you're doing any of those kind of things, there's 2 other methods that you might need to do to get that seed to germinate. One of them is stratification. The other is scarification. So we're going to start with scarification because it's kind of the scariest one. I think it's probably why they call it that. Sometimes seed can have a very hard seed coat. A lot of legumes, baptisias, for example, have a very hard seed coat. Canna lilies, extremely hard seed coat. Water does not penetrate those, so what do you do with them to get them to germinate? If you just put them in soil, they can sit there for months or years until the seed coat is soft enough for moisture to get through for the seed to germinate. So this is where we get into a mechanical intervention with our seed. And we need to cut the seed coat apart, get through that seed coat so moisture can get through. So I'm going to demonstrate on a runner bean. You don't need to do it with runner beans. I'm just going to demonstrate because it's a big seed. So let's say we've got our really hard seed coat here. You pass me that little device there, Laura. And you need to get through the seed coat. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. If the seed is small and needs scarification, get 2 pieces of very fine sandpaper, put the seed between it, rub it around, and that wears the seed coat down. Then you can sow it, water will penetrate. With big seed, that's hard to germinate, like a canna lily, for example. We bring out the big guns. So I get out my rotary tool. I have this sort of sanding, grinding blade on it. I've got it set for not too high of speed, but, you know, high enough it's going to do something. And then we're going to take that seed and we are just going to touch the seed coat until we have cut through it, but not so deep that we've cut through the embryo of the seedling. So you can see I've made a little cut here, right here, and I think maybe it's not even going to be quite enough yet, so we're going to go a little deeper. There we go. So you cut through the seed coat of a hard seed, and you can see that little bit of white in there. That is the seed leaf waiting to come out. So now what's going to happen is if I put this seed into soil, water is going to get in there very, very quickly, and that seed is going to germinate really fast. So let's say this was a canna lily. If I put a canna lily seed in soil, it could be a year. If I make that little cut and I put a canna lily seed in soil, it'll germinate in a week. So it's a very important little step for seeds with very hard seed coats. And that's all you got to do. Beans. Not runner beans. Just the example. It works amazing. It's a little scary. I get it. You can do it with a hand file. You can do it with a nail file. But you know what? If you're doing a lot of seeds, bring out the big guns. Use a rotary tool. Get them done fast. Hardy geraniums are one of those plants that have that hard seed coat. This is Geranium pratense. So when you get into these plants like this that have a smaller seed coat, and you can see the seed here now, if I went at these with the grinder, they would be gone, or my fingertips would be gone, or something would be severely wrong. So often with many seeds that might need the scarification and you're too afraid to do it, we can get around that by soaking. So this is the same geraniums out of this same envelope. I put these to soak last night. We all recognize these. We've all had takeout sauces. You go to the dollar store, you buy a bag of them. $1.25 for like 18 of them. Great for soaking seed. So to look at the seed that we've got in here, these have just been soaking overnight. So you can see them there. Can you see them in there, Lauren? Most of them are sitting at the bottom. That usually means it's a good viable seed. Good viable seeds usually sink to the bottom. After you've soaked for a day, if you've got a couple of seeds floating on top, they might not be any good. But one difference that you'll see between the seeds that I've soaked overnight and the ones that are still dry is that the seeds that I've soaked are almost about 50% bigger already. And that means that that seed is taking up water. So what you can do is look at these seeds. Now, it's been almost 24 hours since I soaked them. I might leave these again till tomorrow. And by that time, I'll see some of these actually starting to germinate, and then I'll move them to a pot of soil, and I'll have hardy geraniums germinating very, very quickly. Whereas if I sowed these dry seed into the pot, it would take a little while longer, even a month, maybe 2 months, to get the seed to germinate. So soaking in warm water, if the seed is small and has a hard seed coat, will allow water to get in there quickly, or you do some mechanical intervention there, and they both do a similar job.
So Jeff, Gloria has been scarifying, I believe that's what she means, her cannas.
Yeah.
But she may be doing it too much. The videos show to do it well until the white is showing.
Yeah.
Should she just keep trying, do it less?
You know what? You want to make sure you're through that seed coat. But even if you go 75% of the way through the seed coat, it's still better than nothing. But don't be afraid to go through, like I said, like I showed on that pea. I'm not going to find it now. I threw it back in the pot, in the bucket. Cut through the seed coat slowly until you can see a little bit of white. You got it there? Oh, good catch. So I got through the seed coat. You could just see a little bit of white there.
Okay, stay there.
You got that?
Yeah.
Okay. You can see that little bit of white there. I haven't cut into the seedling in the seed. I've just got right to it. So it takes a bit of practice. You do it slowly. And if you get to that and you soak that, that will germinate so quickly you'll be amazed, and your cannas will be fantastic. So don't be afraid to get in there and see that white.
So Jeff, Mary wants to know, how big should her perennial plants grown from seed be to plant them in the garden? She's currently trying to grow daylilies, campanulas, small versions of colorful coleus.
Okay, so that gets us into transplanting a little bit. We're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks' time. But ideally, if you've got a perennial that has made a good root system in one of the 3.5-inch pots, perfect. If you can really look after them and you're going to be able to water well, you could even transplant perennials out of something like this size. But you're going to need to be careful. They're going to need to be kept a close eye on so they don't dry out too fast. So what you'd want to endeavor to get is you'd want your perennials to go from a mixed pot like this. Then I might transfer that mixed pot into plugs like this. Grow them on till the root system fills that, 4 to 6 weeks. Transplant them into a 3.5-inch pot for a few more weeks, and then into the garden. Very simple, right?
Can you put the onion seed pots outdoors, winter sow them?
We're going to get to that right now. The other method that will help a lot of seeds germinate, and quite frankly make your life a lot easier, is stratification. So stratification basically means exposing your seed to cold, moist conditions for a period of time. What that does is it breaks down certain chemicals that are in the seed coat that prevent it from germinating. You hear the term winter sowing now a lot, and a lot of people are doing it. It's not new, but it is a method that not a lot of people use, but again, it can be very effective in germinating seed for things that are more uncommon. It does common stuff great too, but if you're getting into the rarer perennials or trees or shrubs, it's almost a necessity. So what we're going to do, actually this is quite easy. Let's say we've sown this whole tray This whole tray has been sown with perennials. We maybe have foxgloves in there. We maybe have some hardy geraniums in there. We maybe got some seed from a shrub that we like. We've got them in there. We've sowed them all exactly the same as I've shown you already. They're moistened. What we then do is we leave them inside for 3 or 4 days under a humidity cover. This always works best when the seed has started to absorb that moisture. All right? So 3 or 4 days inside, in warm. The seed's going to be in there. It's starting to soak up moisture. But there's chemicals in there that are going to stop it from doing anything else until it gets a cold period. And this is where winter sowing comes in handy. Pass me that box there, Laura, please. So rather than just putting them in a tray, you're going to go to the hardware store and you're going to find a nice clear box that fits the tray. This one fits the tray. You could actually even put another row of seed in there. Get it over here. You could actually put another row of pots in here. So this will hold 18 and 6, 24 pots. Once it's all sown, sat inside for a few days, we take this, we close it up, we take this box outside, we find a nice snowbank, we dig a hole in the snowbank, put this whole thing in the snowbank and bury it in snow. And then we forget about it. What's happening through that time is the seed is subjected to cold, but it's moist, and it's also subjected to fluctuating temperatures. So in spring, when the daytime temperatures warm up and then cool down and then warm up and then cool down at night, that helps break down germination inhibitors as well. And what you'll find is that once the snow melts outside, you just look in these boxes, and all of a sudden, as it warms up outside, you're going to see little seedlings popping up all through these pots. There's a lot of benefits to doing this. One, you're not babysitting seeds indoors, which can be very difficult. Tricky seeds will germinate, and your seedlings will be short and tough because they will already be winter hardy as soon as they germinate. A little bit of extra cold weather in April or May is not going to hurt them. It's just going to be perfect. So it's a great way to sow a lot of different seed and have it come up and have not a lot of care for it. Now, there are a couple of drawbacks. For us, we're germinating seed now that we're going to pot up and have ready for people to plant in their gardens in May. Winter sowing, your seedlings might not germinate till May, but that's okay. If it's for your own garden, it doesn't matter. You're going to plant them when you plant them. Your seedlings are going to come up like natural, like they germinated in the garden, and be easy to handle because they're always going to be outside. Once it gets warm enough, you just take that lid off, and you've got your seedlings there, and they can be exposed to the outdoors. So that is stratification. It's a very simple, easy, passive way to do a lot of seed. And like I say, for things that are rare or hard to germinate, it's a great way to do it because Mother Nature does a lot of the work for you. Now, we're going to go through one more method.
Question.
Yeah.
So, it's no secret that in the past 8 weeks there has not been a lot of natural sunlight.
There has not been a lot of
About
natural
10
sunlight.
hours to be exact.
That's right.
Not great for little seedlings. And if you can't afford grow lights, what are your options?
What are the options for lighting seedlings? Well, any kind of light is better than no light. Let's be realistic. If you can't afford the nice, really good, high quality LED grow lights that are available now, just use light bulbs. Even if they're fluorescent, some light is better than no light in the house. What happens indoors if you are germinating seed in too low of light? Your seedlings stretch really fast and they get very spindly and weak and they may fall over. If they fall over, the stems get pinched, your seedlings die, and your seed experiment is not a success.
So, and if you're using grow lights, how many hours a day should the plants be under lights?
12 to 16. 12 to 16 hours is ideal. You want a fairly long day because you want the plants to think that they're in a long day situation. We're still not getting a lot of light, long days yet. So you want to trick the plants a little bit.
If you use the winter sowing method,
winter sowing,
should you put vent holes in the lid of that box?
So where I would put this box is I'm going to put this box outside somewhere in a shady spot, and I'm going to bury it in the snow. So at this point, we do not need any ventilation in here. This is going to be a good box. This is going to keep mice from getting their way into it. It's going to keep weeds from getting in later, but for now, no. Just use the box the way it is. Once it starts warming up outside, then you're going to want to start ventilating. You can put some vent holes in it yourself, in the lid if you want, or just prop the lid a little bit. If you just do that, even just prop the lid a little bit. Just like that. That lets heat out. Once it's warmer and things have mostly germinated, then you're going to take this right off. You'll actually probably take this right out of the plastic tray and just have it sitting on the ground so water can drain. You don't get too much water sitting in the tray. But this is the way to put them outside right now so they're protected from the mice. They've got a little bit of protection. They'll warm up and cool down, and easy peasy. So, got one more method we're going to talk about, and that is the baggy method of germinating seed. So no matter what the seed needs, you can do this with seed. And if you're doing small amounts, it's great. If you want to test seeds that you've had for a while to see if they might germinate, great. It's a great way to do it. What we do is you take these great little thin strips of paper towel, sprinkle your seed on half of it. So we'll do some geranium seed. Come on out of there. There we go. We've got about a dozen or so geranium seeds. We're going to evenly space them on the Ziploc or on the paper towel. There we go. Then we're going to fold that paper towel over them like that. Then we're going to moisten the paper towel. Moisten the paper towel. Get it all nice and damp. Then we've got our seed in sort of a paper towel pouch. We take that paper towel pouch, we go right into a medium-sized Ziploc bag. Just like that. We seal up the Ziploc bag, and our seed is sown. Every day, you pick up your Ziploc bag, hold your seed up to the light, and in a few days or weeks or whatever, you will see those seeds start to germinate and a little root will come out. Think back to the old days of growing beans in kindergarten in a plastic cup. Same idea. But this way is a very controlled way to germinate seed, especially of rare things, things that you don't want to lose track of, things that you might only have a couple of seeds of. And you can do every method that we've done today, from scarification, whatever, warm, cool, and do it in the baggie method. If it's a warm germinating plant, you just leave it. Keep checking it till they germinate. If it's a cold plant, we take these, we put them in the fridge, in our vegetable keeper in the fridge. Takes up a lot less space than this method if we're going to do it inside to cool things. So plants that need, let's say a perennial needs 8 weeks of cool before it will germinate. This can sit in your fridge for 8 weeks. Then you bring it out into the warmth. Then the seeds should germinate. If it needs to be frozen, whatever, refrigerated and go in 2 cycles. Some plants are like that. They need a cold period, then a warm period, then a cold period, and then the next warm period they'll germinate, like a peony. It takes that long. But any seed you do, you can do in this bagging method.
And what do you do that once you see a root growing?
So, once you see a root growing in the bagging method, you go into your baggie, you carefully sort of slip out your paper towels. Use good paper towels because you're going to be moving them around a little bit. Open up your paper towel if you can. You open up your paper towel, and then you get that little germinated seed out and transplant it into your pot of soil. That way you're only transplanting what is germinated. You're not wasting space. Super great space saver. Now, what can happen with the Ziploc method is if seeds are in there for a while, you can get algae buildup. So what you should do is when you get your water together to do that, to soak these, put about 10 parts water to 1 part bleach and use that to moisten your paper towel. That little bit of bleach will stop algae growth in your paper towels for a really long time. So there are your basics. Whatever method you use will depend on what seed you've got, whether it's warm, whether it's cold, whether it needs cool, whether it needs to be chilled, or whether the seed coat needs to be ground through with scarification before you can get some germination from it. I hope that gives you a lot of info to get your seeds started. And I'm sure we've got over our normal time that we like to do today, but hey, it's a big topic. You need to know what you're doing. A little bit later, we're going to look at what to do when the seedlings germinate. And we'll leave you with that today. We've still got a couple of spots left on our trips, but we're filling up very, very fast. Go to masonhousegardens.com, look at garden tours, England, Ireland, south of Scotland. Some great trips, some great gardens. That's it for this week. We will see you next week on Let's Get Growing Facebook Live.